Hi guys, my name is Leif McGinnis, and today's project is I'm repairing the damage that was done to a client's home in Palm Springs. This is actually a part of the mailbox, and the mailbox had these address numbers that were a part of it. There's actually 3 different sets of these numbers, and it's not as simple as just going to, ordering these numbers and then, rebuilding and installing them. One, these aren't available anymore, and it's a very specific font. This is called a Neutra font. The house is a Richard Neutra house built in 1937. The client, Grace Miller, was not interested in a normal home. Her and Richard Neutra were both trailblazers to want to build out there 85 years ago. Look how built up it is now, and how sparse it was in 1937. Not a house in sight, just desert. This is stainless steel, and I thought, at first glance, I thought, well, this is just solid, but it's actually hollow the way they did it here. They took sheet metal and they soldered it together, put these posts on here, but I'm not going to take the time to do that. It's going to be a lot easier for me to just get some stainless steel plate and water jet out these numbers. So one of the first problems I ran into was the Neutra font for these numbers is not the same as these numbers. It's very, very close, but the proportions are all different. So the 1, for instance, the thickness versus its height, that's different. The 2 is different. The 3 is longer than the other numbers, and my client wanted to keep them the same as these. So I had to recreate the font according to these numbers. So what I did was I just measured all the numbers manually with calipers and just kind of came up with a thickness that was uniform. I don't know if you guys have priced metals lately, but they're pretty expensive. And 3/4 inch thick is not a real common thickness for stainless steel. Smaller thicknesses are far more common. The cheapest source I found was actually buying this from somebody on eBay on the East Coast. Somebody had a remnant of 3/4 inch stainless that was just big enough for me to fit. And I had a little trouble finding a water jetting place here in Los Angeles that would allow me to come in and document the process of cutting these. The people that I went with, they're in Chatsworth. They're called Natural Water Jetting. They're really nice. They let me come in and shoot video, but the process takes a while. So if you want a nice smooth edge and you're cutting through 3/4 inch thick stainless, you got to go really slow. So I was there for about 6 hours, and these numbers turned out pretty good. There was one problem with the 3, so I welded over it, and then I machined it down and sanded it down and fixed it. So the next step was determining, okay, how am I going to mount all these numbers with all these posts and keep everything perfectly straight, perfectly square, aligned. It's not easy. You can't just measure things and drill holes and expect everything to fit in perfectly. Ain't gonna work. So my solution was to use a fixture. On the computer, I lined up all these holes to line up with the holes in the backs of all the numbers. This is my milling machine, and this is how I'm drilling my holes for the numbers. So I can move the bed around on the different axes, but more importantly, I have a digital readout. So I have total control over position. So when I put the numbers in here, I can drill the holes in very, very precise locations. I've got some double stick tape there that was connecting the aluminum to a piece of acrylic so I can drill into it a little bit. And I'm using a little pilot right here to drill into the stainless steel. And I'm chasing it with another drill bit. And this is not the typical pilot that you would use for 1032. I'm using one that's actually a little bigger. And the reason I'm doing this is I don't want to tap 48 holes with a small little tap like that. They snap really easily. But I am cutting into it a little bit. So the JB weld will have something to grab onto when I glue the posts in there. So I'm using 220 aluminum oxide sandpaper, and I keep it wet to keep it cool and so that the metal doesn't build up on the sandpaper. The white sandpaper is 460 grit aluminum oxide. So if you look at the surface of the stainless steel, this is the hot rolled side, and this is the reason that I sanded it. And this side here, this is after it's been sanded. I have a bench grinder and a buffing wheel, and I'm using Triple E compound to give it a mirror finish, and then I follow up with white rouge to give it an even better finish. And I'm using some kerosene to get all the buffing compound off, and then I'm following that with some simple green to get it nice and clean. And I've got a little syringe here filled with JB Weld, and I'm squirting it into the holes. And then I've got these 1032 posts that go into the hole. So when you walk into Home Depot, you have a lot of choices for concrete products. First, I went with Sika anchoring epoxy, but I found that it cured far too fast, and I switched over to Quikrete anchoring epoxy, which had a little bit longer working time. All right, so it probably would have been easier to fill these holes and clean it up before I put the numbers in. The stuff I'm using is called Propoxy 20. It's a 2-part epoxy clay, and you just kind of take a slice and then you knead it together with your fingers, and it's kind of like clay. And I just pushed it into the holes and just kind of flattened it. And after I flattened it, I just kind of hit it with this little tool here to kind of, I just wanted to get the surface to match the cinder block around it. Painted the surface with a paintbrush using floor paint, and I dipped it in a little bit of sand to kind of match the surface, and it turned out pretty well. So this is all a lot of work to make address numbers for a house, but it is kind of rewarding knowing that you're restoring an important historic house. Thanks for watching.